This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, October 11th edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you after another exciting weekend of Breeders' Cup prep action. Of course, the race that I know you all care the most about from last weekend was the half marathon that I ran in Brooklyn. You're happy to know that I am still alive. My time came back at 2 hours and 25 minutes, but I gave the official clocker a 50 to put me down in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so you can bet me back next time. I'm here today with the usual crew, plus a very special guest. We'll get to the special guest in a minute. We'll start off with the usual crew. From the DRF offices in New York, we have Mike Hogan.
Pete, glad to hear you made it safely.
Made it safe and sound, as you know, because you and I got to hang out at Belmont Park yesterday. Beautiful Belmont Park on a sunny fall afternoon. Had a good day out there. Also, I believe the plane has landed, and he's now back in Austin, Texas. Jonathon Kinchen. JK, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I actually got a phone call that I had some clockers that saw you, and they think that you might be better, a little bit shorter. maybe one turn for you.
One turn, teasing a little bit of a topic we're going to be hitting on later in the show. But we have a very limited amount of time today with our special guest, and this is the first time we've ever had a guest on the show. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't know his proper name. I know him as Pipes. I've heard him referred to. Desiree, I think, calls him Slim. I know that his first name is Chris. I've known him for about 10 years. He's one of the boys from L.A., Lower Albany, who hang out with me at the Paddock Bar. Welcome to the podcast, Pipes.
P, I appreciate it, man. I was just trying to actually picture you running for 2.5 hours, man. So I got a good laugh out of that for sure.
So I'll ask you first off, Chris, what is your real name, and maybe give us a little bit of background about how you got involved in the racing industry.
Real name is Chris Pipito. I can't believe that I've known you for about 10 years and you still don't know that, but nevertheless, I'm the agent for Angel Cruz down here in Maryland, and got involved in racing just through going to the track at Saratoga, obviously, where I met you guys. But got involved with Angel through a close friend, Angel Cordero, and the rest is history, man. We're just grinding it out down here in Maryland.
Well, it's a little bit more than just to grind it out, Chris. What a huge day it must have been for you on Friday, opening day of the fall meet at Keeneland, to see your jock get a Grade 1 win in the Alcibiades. Tell me, how, as a jockey agent, how were you involved in that event coming together, and what was it like for you emotionally watching that? I imagine that's pretty much the pinnacle for a jockey agent, to win a Grade 1 at Keeneland.
Oh man, it was incredible. I mean, you can ask Jonathon that. He was there with me. I think I just got my voice back this morning, and yeah, it was, how it all came together, obviously, is just through hard work and, catching some breaks. Obviously, getting on for a guy like Graham was pretty incredible. We had the opportunity to ride that filly her first 2 times, 5.5 on the grass. And then obviously when they stretched her out to a mile on the dirt. And Graham and the owner, Mrs. Wyeth, were gracious enough to let us come out to Keeneland and ride the Alcibiades. And, it was a moment of a lifetime, Pete, for sure.
Let me ask you, Motion, not known as a super aggressive trainer in terms of spotting the horses, I'm guessing this was not a thing where minutes after the previous race he decided he was going there. What do you know about the process where that ambitious spot was chosen for the filly?
Honestly, I think they kind of just waited to see how the field was kind of shaping up, and then kind of went from there. I think obviously they were, as you heard Graham say, they were pretty happy with her progress after her maiden win, and obviously when they got her back, she had been doing well, and they looked at the field and decided they wanted to take a shot. And I thought that after her maiden score, I thought that obviously she had some potential to go on and do nice things, but for her to step up and run the way she did the other day, yeah, man, it was incredible. It was really incredible.
what are you hearing in terms of Breeders' Cup chatter? Or again, with as conservative as somebody like Graham is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to tell right now. I mean, obviously, I'm sure if she stays well and goes back to Fairhill and looks well, and they want to take a shot. Obviously, I'm sure that now is the right time to do it. I mean, I think that it's there's no songbirds out there or anything like that, and I think she'd fit well. So from that perspective, I guess it's just kind of wait and see for Graham and the owner.
Going to be fun to see what happens with Dancing Rags. That was certainly a great moment. Well, we have you for another minute or two here, Chris. I want to ask you, I know a lot of the people listening to the show, like you were before you got officially involved in the business, a lot of longtime fans, people who think about getting involved in the racing industry. Do you have any advice for people who might want to try to get a foothold and turn racing from something that they do for a passion into something that they can do for a living?
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be probably just to find out, where you think your niche is, whether it be, obviously, looking at horses, whether it be handicapping horses, what type of work you'd like to do, and then find out how you can achieve that. I know a very slim percentage of people that make it in this game as handicappers or gamblers. Unless your name is Jonathon Kinchen or maybe Pete Fornatale. I don't know too many guys out there that are just handicapping for a living. So it's great to be ambitious, and the great thing about this game is that you really can start out at nothing and achieve everything. And I've kind of seen that firsthand. I think in the past 6 or 7 months, we've kind of started at the ground floor, and we obviously Friday had one of the greatest thrills of both mine and his lifetime. So just stay aggressive and stay hungry, and that's what the racing game's all about.
I love it. Before we let you go, Jonathon, I'm sure you've got something you want to ask here on air, and then we'll let you get about your busy day, Chris.
Well, the first thing I need to tell you is it's not appropriate for the show, but if you ever see Chris in person, you have to ask him to tell the Jerry Bailey story.
I can only imagine which one that is.
The best story ever. I was lucky enough to hear it twice this weekend. If you can get the Jerry Bailey story, then you're fortunate enough. So if you ever see Pipes at the track, go ahead and ask him that. No, I told Chris this a few times this weekend, and I'll say it again, and I'm still trying to figure out why. I think I know why, but I've been involved in some pretty cool moments in racing. I was there when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown. I've been alive for some really big scores, and I've been fortunate enough to hit those scores for large amounts of money. But I have never in my life felt the way I felt when that horse turned for home, and it was just pure joy. And to see Chris's face before, during, and after the race was one of the top 5 moments I'll ever have in this sport, and I'm so glad that I got to be a part of it. And I'm so excited for Chris and Angel and what they're going to do moving forward off of such a milestone in both of their careers. So congratulations and keep up the good work.
Man, you're the best, buddy. I'll tell you one thing. I didn't know that the green room at Keeneland existed until this weekend, but I think going forward, I'm going to watch every race from there. And if we're fortunate enough to be out at Santa Anita, I don't know, JK. I think we got to find a green room out there, buddy.
100%.
Good stuff, Chris. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Good stuff. Thanks again to Chris for popping in there for a few minutes. Really, that was a great thrill to see somebody who, we met so long ago, just hanging out, talking at the rail, watching horses walk in, and to get to know that he's not only gotten involved professionally in the sport, but to have a day like that, and JK, that must have been fun being on hand to witness it. So, Jonathon, it sounds like you did, in fact, divert the circling route of your plane that you were on for Friday's show and fly right to Keeneland. How was your weekend up there?
Oh, that place is magical. It's I've said a million times my favorite place in the world is Santa Anita, and Keeneland is slowly becoming is starting to get to it at the wire. It's just there's a lot of things about it that I have no problem saying out loud or annoying. Those people in the green jackets, they do not play around. They will snatch you up quick. You walk to a room you're not supposed to go to.
It happened mid-show. I don't know if you guys remember, but this spring I had cleared to be in an area, but one green jacket didn't give the other green jacket the memo, and the next thing you know, he basically during the show, I'm being grabbed by the ear and let out of the lawn. So you do have to be careful about that. But there are places there that are a little more chilled out, isn't that right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The green room is very chill. But the other great thing about it is I was fortunate enough to get there early one morning before, right when the gates opened, before anyone else was there. And the amount of people that Keeneland employs that their job is to make that place beautiful. I mean, there's people trimming trees. There's people rinsing off the sidewalks. There's no tickets on the ground. The landscaping's immaculate. The weather was beautiful. I mean, that place, if you've never been, it's so magical. And I'm a huge Kurt Becker fan. I think he's one of the best, most underrated race callers. We get him for 6 weeks a year, and I know we joke the running joke. Any time it got a little bit too silent, someone would say widening on a 5-length lead, and it was the best. It's always a lot of fun. I look forward to it, and I think that we're going to be able to get back here maybe in a couple of weeks.
I'm very much looking forward to an annual trip. Mike Hogan, have you ever been down to Keeneland? If not, you got to make this a spot on your Magical Mystery Tour.
I've never set foot in the state of Kentucky.
Wow.
I know.
You work in horse racing and you've never set foot in the state of Kentucky. We're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah, seriously.
Get you down to the Derby next year, maybe. That might be a fun way to go. You can time it just right, end of Keeneland, and then I guess you could do the opening weekend of Churchill, but not necessarily the Derby. But we got to get you down there, man.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I won't. I won't resist too much.
Well, there's lots of racing stuff to talk about. We obviously have a bunch of races to review, but I think we teased it already, so we have to get there. Jonathon Kinchen's dream of Exaggerator winning the Malibu Stakes at one turn at Santa Anita sounds like that's out the window, huh, JK?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. I didn't get to be proven right all the way. So, congratulations to them, though. I mean, it's awesome when you can have a horse that can turn into a stallion, and so good for him, and good for Windstar for taking a chance on him, and hopefully he has some success, and hopefully his progeny can run a little bit farther than he can.
Oh my God! You can't. I thought there for a second you were gonna be nice. And then you throw that in there at the end. Mike, were you surprised by this news?
A little bit. I mean, at this point, unfortunately, I'm not surprised by any racehorse 3-year-old retiring sound at this point. I'd absolutely prefer to see them racing. I want to see them do what they can do as 4-year-olds. Many of them often improve. They find new dimensions. I mean, look at California Chrome now as a 5-year-old. That's what I want to see. I want to see horses progress and mature and continue to race as older horses. But this is what the game is. So no, I'm not surprised. But I am a little disappointed. And the other news that came out in the last week that maybe was missed by some is the winner of the third leg of the Triple Crown was retired as well. Yeah,
that's right. Creator. What was the story there, Mike?
He was sold to Japan, and he's going to stand in Japan.
Okay. And, I mean, I guess, again, not much of a surprise when you think about where those sort of horses are in their form cycle. You can make an argument that from here on in, they're more likely to diminish value than increase it. Is that what we're thinking goes into a decision like that?
Yeah, I would think that the other Triple Crown race winner needs to go ahead and hang it up as well. That's just my opinion. I think that the writing was on the wall with those two horses. What is Exaggerator and or Creator going to really, how are they going to improve their resume moving forward? It didn't feel like there was many opportunities for them to do that. And I feel the same way about Nyquist. I mean, good for him. He was a Derby winner and a multiple Grade 1 winner this year as a 3-year-old, but it feels as if maybe it's time for him to go home too and start passing on some of that Uncle Mo genes.
But, of course, there is the mitigating factor there with Mr. Redham having the slot in the Pegasus. Do you think they're still thinking about that? Not that that would preclude him being a stallion next season, but do you think they're still maybe holding out hope? We heard the story about the growth spurt. It sounded like we were supposed to see a lot more from Nyquist in the last start than we did, but have you heard anything along those lines, JK, or are you just guessing that that's maybe factoring into the decision to hold out a little bit longer?
Oh, I would imagine so. I mean, when you have a Grade 1 winner over a racetrack that they're going to be giving away $7 million to the winner, and you've invested $1 million to participate, I would think that that's 100% the reason why he's still in training.
So we'll follow that story as we go on. There is no Breeders' Cup target for Nyquist that I've heard.
Classic. They're going on.
Oh, they are going to do the Classic. Okay, so I guess they figure a respectable run in the Classic could then lead to something that makes sense for the Pegasus in January. All right, let's get to reviewing some of these races from the past weekend. I'll start the first one with the story. Everybody knows I'm a professional wrestling fan. My friend Chris Jericho and I have worked on a number of books together, so I understand a little bit about wrestling psychology. And there's, of course, in wrestling this idea of that you can play the baby face, the good guy, or the heel, the bad guy. I've written a lot about Jonathon Kinchen throughout his couple of years now in the handicapping contest arena, and I'd say, generally speaking, he has been portrayed as a baby face, as a good guy, somebody who's come into this world and accomplish some tremendous things in a short amount of time, who always likes to take time out and give advice, whether it's here on giving out $100 winners on the podcast or talking to people at tracks, somebody who people can look up to and admire. It's been suggested recently that that's changing. And I'll give you two examples of it. One of them was the article I wrote last week about Jonathon. I didn't even think of it this way, but it was basically him talking about how he likes to fund his contest play on DRF tournaments through matchups, basically winning $50 at a time off of smaller players. Not exactly the stuff of good guys, Jonathon.
Well, well, first of all, I lose a lot of those as well. But it's just a strategy, a money management strategy that I've come up with, and I actually came up with it. I was doing it kind of indirectly for some time, and then I came up with it with your buddy and our friend Grant LaGrange. Kind of asked me, what advice do you have as a young tournament player of some things that I should do? And the two main things I came up with is record keeping, which I think we all should probably do a little bit better, which is understand what you're actually spending and how much you're winning and what you're losing and winning, and is your strategy effective? And the other thing I told him is that it's hard to be good and beat 36 guys. It's tough. It's a hard thing to do, and it doesn't happen that often. It's a lot easier to beat one guy. And so what I've always felt makes sense is if I can spread out my equity through beating one guy and beating 36, that I'll be able to stay afloat a lot longer trying to beat the 36 with being fortunate enough to win the coin flip every now and again. And if you're pushing money through the windows, you have to believe that you have somewhat of an okay opinion. And so just like every other horse player, I think I've got a good opinion. Otherwise, I'd be insane for continuously putting money through the window. So by no means was it meant to be a when I was told that, when someone brought it to our attention, someone that we both really respect, I was like, dang, I didn't even think about it that way.
Well,
and then I blamed it on the writer.
Well, that's always a smart thing to do. You can always blame the writer if all else fails. But now when I tell people I doubt anybody listening to this show has started to hate you based on that story, but I've got one now. I'm going to turn the audience against you right here and now, Jonathon, because
I don't even know what you're going to say. This is going to be interesting.
This will be fun. Well, we were talking about the First Lady at Keeneland on the podcast on Friday, and I wish I didn't think to pull the little clip to play it back, but as I recall it, it was basically a big spiel from you about how Tepin can't lose, and you might as well put all your money through Tepin, correct?
100%. Yeah.
And then I heard from our friend Mike Maloney, who you ran into at Keeneland after the First Lady is run, and Photo Call wins and pays 60 and might as well have paid 600 to me for as much as I could have come up with Photo Call, even betting after the race. And Mike Maloney tells me via text, oh, Jonathon tipped that horse to me. And so here I am thinking, A, what in the blue heck did Jonathon see in Photo Call? And B, why the heck didn't he tell me and everyone else listening to the podcast to bet Photo Call? What's going on, JK?
Mike, well, first of all, Mike put me on this. We talked both mornings that of Keeneland Saturday and Sunday. We talked for a second. We just went through the PPs. I shared some ideas. He shared some ideas. He provided some good insight. I gave him some good insight. We get to the race, and I said, I don't think that they can beat Tepin. And he said, I don't either. Who do you think? He goes, I'm trying to find someone to hook up. Who do you think you could hook up there? I kind of panicked a little bit because I really didn't like anyone else. I knew I was completely against Celestine. And I said, I think that if I was playing the race that way, Photo Call would be the only person that I would use. With that being said, I played the pick 5 with my buddy Jake Ballas, and we did not have Photo Call in our pick 5.
That makes me feel better.
We went 4 or 5. We would have if we would have had her, we would have been involved in that $45,000 pick 5 payout. So yes, I did tip Mike the horse as a horse that he could use and hook up, but I did not get 1 cent off of the horse, not one.
You're still a baby face then in my eyes. You're okay. But give me the case for Photo Call before the race, because I thought there were about 5 horses in there who'd run better pace figures than she did. And again, the result that you could have knocked me over with a feather after that race, and that wasn't just the 13.1 miles I had under me.
Well, there's a couple of just basic ideas that said to me, oh, it makes sense. One being that she was cutting back, so that's always something that is interesting. A horse that's forwardly placed that's cutting back, feels like they'll finish well. I've always been a fan of the horse. Even when Graham had her, I felt like she was always finishing, and she was kind of pace compromised a lot. When she went to Todd started running her a little bit more forwardly. I've just always thought she was a good horse. And then the argument that I made about how well Kent was riding on the turf, it seemed very likely to me that she could be one that could be part of it, since I was so against the second favorite. The problem being, which could lead us to another discussion, is Kent gave her the ride that I needed on What a View, who we had singled in some other situations, and he gave the ride that I needed on What a View to Photo Call.
Well, we're not going to move on to that just yet, because we do need to talk, obviously, about Tepin. My read on the situation. Well, you know what? I'll put a pin in my read on the situation, and I'll ask Mike Hogan. Mike, what did you think of Tepin's performance, and what do we think about Tepin going forward in terms of her defense in the Breeders' Cup Mile?
Well, when a horse gets loose like that, and a good horse at that, Photo Call is no slouch.
Grade 1 winner. Yeah.
Right. When you give a horse that kind of advantage, it's really tough to run them down unless they just absolutely stop. Photo Call didn't stop. Tepin ran on. Tepin was the one that had to go after her and do the dirty work. And, she was getting there, but obviously it was too little too late. And, I think it's absolutely right what Jonathon said. Credit Kent for that one. Credit Kent for taking advantage of what could have been potentially a slow early pace and essentially running them off their heels. It was the only way that she was going to win the race, and it's exactly how she did.
Jonathon, so right now in the UK, Tepin trading at around 2-1. Buy or sell?
Buy, 100%. Couple of things. And I'll answer your question after I just tell this one. If you haven't seen, and I don't know if you can still find it, but if you haven't seen Kent's post-race interview, it's really funny. He said, Todd told me to cover the horse up, and he's like, not today, sir. Not today, Todd. Whatever.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and so it was really funny. Anyways, I was at dinner Sunday night, and I saw Mr. Masterson at the bar. He was so happy. He acted like he could care less that she lost. Yeah. And he even made a joke that now he'll get a better number on her in the Breeders' Cup. Look, it's and I don't even, and as much as I love to knock jocks unfairly, and because I couldn't even stand on a horse. Julian, in my opinion, it just got away from him, and it was one of those situations where you couldn't have expected that to happen. And next thing you know, the horse is 10 clear, and it's like, oh, well, she's going to come back to me. And
Right.
she did a little bit, but not really. I mean, he made up six lengths, it feels like, in the stretch. It was just one of those situations where I think they got away from her, and I'll be happy to line up and bet her again. And if she gets beat there, it's not going to be because she's lost a step or she's not good enough. It's going to be because this idea that she's going to like the firm ground is actually incorrect. I believe that she's going to like it. She seems like the type of turf mare that will enjoy it. And so, it feels like this is going to be the Breeders' Cup of me betting all these super horses off of poor performances. And that doesn't seem like a recipe for success, but it feels like that's where I'm going.
I mean, poor performance sounds harsh to me. I mean, I think she got everything out of it she needed to. You expected her to win. I don't have anything to add to what you guys said. I thought you analyzed it perfectly. But if I were part of Tepin's connections, I wouldn't be upset at all. I mean, it's always people get so hung up on seeing all the ones to the right of the running lines of the PP, and they're pretty and all, but there's more to racing than just finishing first. And here you have who's going to have the horse with the best resume in the race on a course she should adore, coming back with a useful prep where she wasn't abused to run pretty well. I think it's all systems go.
So I'll say one thing. Jonathon, you said something about photo call, you expecting her to come back to the field, and she didn't. She actually, if you look at the incremental split, she actually did. Her final quarter mile, she ran the third slowest quarter mile in the race. She just had such a large lead, it didn't matter at that point. Tepin ran more than you were right, 6 lengths, a second and a fifth faster in the quarter mile than Photocall did. By far the fastest closing quarter in that race. But when you give a horse a 10-length lead, it kind of doesn't matter.
I'll let you respond to that, JK.
No, I completely agree. No, 100%. And there was actually chatter, and I hadn't looked at the numbers. And if you have it in front of you, Mike, you might be able to answer it. But
sure.
Apparently, her second Photocall's second quarter is kind of where the race was. Really gassed it.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
What she opened up on everyone, and that was in my opinion that was the brilliance that is Kent DeSormo when Kent DeSormo has his mind on being brilliant.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of these other grade ones. Unless, Mike, did you have one more point you wanted to make about Tepin before we move on?
No.
Excellent. Let's talk about the 2-year-old race. JK, how did you think the main track at Keeneland was playing on Saturday? I have a slight opinion in the matter, but I haven't gone back and done all the work on it yet.
Oh, I'm a little bit biased. No pun intended. I felt like the track was inside a majority of the day. And then Classic Empire wins on the outside from that trip, and he's making me a little bit nervous about my Derby future wager. So it's a tricky thing. I thought it was a little bit inside, but that race kind of could have proven otherwise. But the services can change in the middle of the day. Regardless, I thought Classic Empire ran huge.
Yeah, my read, just to explain to folks who might not know, you're talking about not a bet you have on Classic Empire, but the bet you have on Not This Time, and you're saying that if, in fact, Classic Empire was against the bias, as many observers, including me, thought he might have been, that would maybe mean we have a new co-favorite for next year's Kentucky Derby. Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, and I feel silly even talking about the Derby this early, but that's what happens when you get a future bet. You start getting a little bit crazy.
Well, you're getting the best of the number. I don't even know if we've talked about it on the show yet. You got on at 100, and the last odds I saw, the horse was into 20-1. So that's something. Does that part must make you feel good?
Yeah, I was thinking about selling it. I just got to find someone to buy it. I'm going to take it with. I'm going to take it with me to Santa Anita, and I promise you, I'll be peddling it as soon as he crosses the wire in the juvenile.
That's pretty amusing stuff. Well, we'll have to see. Subsequent results will tell us a little bit more about how the track was playing. The one thing, the horse that did run second also did get a closing outside trip there. So I don't know if you can. It's a little bit hard to draw any conclusions. That was just my real-time thought. Regardless, though, Classic Empire seems to have gotten over any of the sort of bad boy symptoms that had plagued him earlier on, most famously wheeling in the hopeful right at the start. I mean, how impressed were you by this performance, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say right now, I was 100% wrong on the horse, or at least my doubts were certainly unfounded. He looked good. He was by far the best in the race, and credit to the Cassie team for whatever they did after that debacle. And frankly, there's really no other word for it. The debacle from the hopeful. They got this horse right. They got his head on straight, and he looks like an absolute player going forward.
And I think it's a good. And listen, I promise I'm not redboarding. It's just if you didn't listen Friday, this is just one of those examples. Pete and I have talked about it a lot, and I've talked about it a lot with a lot of other handicappers. It's like this is just one of those races that's a poster child example for. There's so many times that you think you're getting good value in situations, and you just have to double think it. Just double think it. Don't try to get too cute. Don't put yourself into this box that you always have to bet favorites or you always have to bet bombs. Really take the situation and try to analyze it and find out where the real value is and what's the most likely thing that can happen.
And for you, Jonathon, that part of the key was just hearing the training reports, right? You had faith in knowing the Cassie team as you do and having some information about how the horse had been working. That gave you the confidence that the horse wasn't going to be showing up again unless the head was screwed on straight. Is that fair to say?
It was not, yes, but I just want to be clear just so everyone, someone says, well, you knew that. Well, it wasn't Cassie information. I didn't hear it from them or for anyone.
No.
All I know is that there was a problem with the blinkers. I mean, with his focus, he added the blinkers and he was working well from the gate. Just like you can get from there obviously Keeneland wasn't in. I don't know if there was a DRF workout report for Keeneland, but I don't think there was. I think they're probably still in New York.
Yeah, there was, I think, because if a horse had worked in New York but was running a Keeneland, it was included in the report. And I think I don't have the PPs in front of me, but I think one of Classic Empire's last works or certainly works after the Hopeful came in New York, so they had a report on it. It was positive.
So it's just one of those deals where you have to read the words that are in those reports, not just look at the grade, because it's the situation in which you can hear that, that might be a problem that's solved. And like we've talked about before, you can also find clues of who horses we're working with.
Yeah, there was a gate work on September 15th from Saratoga that I would assume was in the report. I didn't actually get a chance to peruse it as I normally do. Those clocker reports available on DRF.com. They're another indispensable resource that can help, just the way the formulator can answer questions about trainers and how they do in certain spots. The workout report can help you get valuable information about how a horse is adjusting to blinkers, for example.
All right, I have it. September 15th, Saratoga broke well and looked great. And I don't know if you ever read these clocker reports very often. They very rarely use superlatives in here. So great is a strange word to see in here, and it's one you want to take notice of, especially with a young horse. Often they'll do that with, Tepin. They had awesome in there as a word to describe one of her works, and that's fair. But it's rare to hear them say any horse looked great. So anyway, broke well and looked great from the gate with his ears pricked and very lightly urged late through very strong late fractions of 37 and 4, 49 and 1, 101 and 1, 1-4 out and 114 and 3, rating B+.
All right, speaking of awesome, let's talk about my girl, Miss Temple City. You can't stop rock and roll, and you can't stop the DRF Players podcast. Getting it done at 7-1 in the Shadwell Turf Mile. JK, what'd you think?
Oh, I think I'm glad I was on the podcast because I only used her because you picked her.
I'll take a little commission on that one. You got some 5 or 6 there, didn't you? I'll take a beer.
Deal.
Mike, I think
the takeaway from that race is, holy cow, Ironicus was flying late.
Wow, she sure was. Certainly one to are you? If these two come back and oppose each other in at the Breeders' Cup in the mile, I mean, do you think either one is good enough to get the money there, JK?
Yeah, I mean, they're both good enough to take the money. I mean, to get the money, I think that Tepin will win at this point. Obviously, if everything comes back good for her. I mean, I haven't heard anything, and so maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like there's at least some reason that they would consider the consider running in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf with Miss Temple City? I mean, I get it. I understand she's a double Grade 1 winner against boys at a mile, but at Santa Anita, if you're going to win at a mile, if you're going to win at a mile and a quarter, Santa Anita is the best place to do it. You start down the hill. It's a nice, tight, firm course, and she can avoid the likes of Tepin and maybe some other European horses that it seems that she's not done as well against.
It'll be interesting to see if there's a odd effect of the Tepin loss of maybe more Europeans coming over thinking, regardless of whether it's true or not, thinking that Tepin might be vulnerable. I am noticing a lot of new names in the betting of European horses. This is a story we're going to have to follow up through the pre-entries. Not going to spend much more time on it here, but there's a lot of names of some horses who would deserve serious consideration, as good as Tepin's been. But let's get back to the Shadwell Turf Mile for a minute. Mike Hogan, what did you think of Miss Temple City, and where do you think she's going forward?
I think that Graham Motion and the owners have made a lot of money dodging Tepin this year. I mean, talk about a path to success in Grade 1s against males. You take supposedly the easier route, and you win 2 Grade 1s against males. She looked really good. You're right. Ironicus came home 1 second faster than her, 22.55 versus 23.55. Those two ran huge races. But you're right. I don't know. All things being equal, I just like the idea that now Tepin's price has helped in the mile.
Would Miss Temple City have won the Tepin race?
No way.
What did the figures come back on that? Do you have it in front of you, Mike?
I can bring them up. Yes, 106 for Miss Temple City.
That's going to be a faster speed figure than Tepin ran, I think.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I believe so. I don't have it. I can give me 5 seconds and I'll find the Tepin figure.
I think it's going to probably be like a 104, 105. But Mike, you say unequivocally yes. JK, what do you answer your own question? What do you think?
No, I don't think anyone's going to beat Photo Call with the way that race was ridden, unless Edgar wrote.
It's more a question of how Tepin would do in the other race, I think.
Okay, well, so the answer is the figures that a figure that I looked at says that Tepin was faster.
Interesting. So I got to take a long look at that. I mean, it's more academic than anything else. Obviously, pace situations so much dictate what's going on in turf racing with internal fractions and the relationship therein. But it is just an interesting exercise in speed figures. And that reminds
it's also.
I
asked it the other way, but I didn't even think to ask it. Well, would Tepin have won the Shadwell Mile? And it feels as if she would have the way she ran with a more common scenario in terms of the pace.
Right. Well, it would bring her ability. You can only quicken so fast, and even Tepin can only quicken so fast, and a 5-length lead at the pace call is just too much for almost any horse. I mean, depending on who you're running down. It's hard to run down a Grade 1 winner with a 5-length lead. That would have been a very different deal had the situation been reversed.
Yeah, so Tepin got a 104.
So that's it.
Yeah, 2 points, right?
2-point difference. So I want to take a little bit more of a look at that, but again, more just for academic purposes. I don't think you can really draw super meaningful comparisons given the difference in pace situations. I just think it's interesting. That reminds me of a question that we had last time that we didn't get to. I forget who asked it, Mike. If you know, we can credit the person. But it was, Jonathan, you had cited on a previous show some non-commercial speed figures that you sometimes have access to. And the question was, in this day and age with so many good final time speed figures out there commercially, is it really worth the effort to make one's own figures? And I have an answer for it as well, but why don't you go first?
Well, there's always some subjectivity to it. So as long as you can keep that in mind, there's always got to make – when there's comes to making a figure, there always has to be a decision made, a subjective decision made in making the figure. And that's why I feel like it's beneficial to be able to see more than one because of that, obviously.
Yeah, and for me, sometimes – I mean, what I will do at this point in my handicapping career is occasionally consult more than one commercial source and make evaluations that way. But by making your own figures, there's a lot more value to it. For one thing, I'm a firm believer that the most valuable figure is the one the fewest people see. And so in that instance, whether it's figures Jonathon's referring to or figures you make yourself, that's going to have a smaller pool of people looking at them. So it's going to, in my view, provide a more valuable perspective. But then there's also this idea, and we referenced him before in the show, but Mike Maloney, huge proponent of this, just by going through the process of making figures, at least for a little while, and Paul Matisse has said this as well when we interviewed him on the podcast earlier this year, by going through the process of making figures, you learn so much about the game, about how races are run, about your own circuit, that you get all this residual beneficial knowledge. So especially if you're a novice player who's getting serious about handicapping and never gone through that exercise or that process before, I recommend it super highly. Anything to add on that, Mike? Have you ever made your own figures or considered doing it?
I thought about it. I'm not really that ambitious. And there are a lot of good figures out there that I use as a starting point, and then I kind of diverge from there in terms of pace as well as trainer stats and class and things. I appreciate it, and I agree 100% with the value of making your own figures. I just don't have the time.
Yeah, and a lot of it just depends on its time and how your brain works. Some people, like I love getting stuck into, look, you can't be a slave to numbers. I think we've sort of proven that in the game, as individual handicappers anyway. But there's something so nice about being able to quantify things or understand which figures you can. But for example, you're consulting multiple sources and they all line up. You can pretty much treat that figure, I don't want to say like gospel, but you can come a lot closer to treating that figure like gospel than you can if you look at three sources and they all have the horses ranked differently. That's a situation maybe where okay, there's more subjectivity in play here, and maybe it's a place where I can rely on other angles of handicapping. Does that sound about right to you, JK?
No, absolutely. And to be honest, it's probably a point that is a race that we should at least mention for a second. That I looked at 4 different figures, and 4 figures said that Big Gray Rocket was not fast enough, and like an idiot, I still found a way to bet him, and the horse did run. So it's like when you can get that confirmation from 4 different opinions and 4 different logics, and they all say the same thing, there's no reason to bang your head up against the wall.
Let's get to Big Gray Rocket in a minute, but let's go to those Belmont races. We got about 20 minutes left. I want to talk about at least the Grade 1s. Did either of you guys have any particular takeaway from the Frisette for starters?
Not particularly. I mean, I don't know. Do we think we saw the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner there?
I guess that's the real question.
Yeah.
What figure did Yellow Agate earn? If you want to look that up real quick.
I'm looking it up right now. She got a 77.
Yeah,
same as Libby's Tail.
Yeah, seems a little too slow to be a factor in the big one. Were you watching the Belmont races much the other day, JK, or were you too tied on a Keeneland?
No, absolutely. That's one of the beautiful things about the green room. Misty will get all the TVs in order for you, and we had Belmont right there in front of us, so. I watched, but I was really just wanting to see the next race. I wasn't really that interested here. I played Sky Gesture a little bit. She got a weird trip with Mike down inside and just never really picked up her feet. And it was an underwhelming race before they ran, and it's an underwhelming race after.
Mm-hmm.
In the Kelso, that next race, I think we tipped Tommy Macho, not to much avail. But what were your thoughts on the Kelso, JK?
Oh, it's actually I got confused on which race was next. I thought that if I never thought Anchor Down would. I just was never a fan of the horse. And from what I've heard, they're not Breeders' Cupping him. They're gonna keep him in Cigar Mile.
Cigar Mile mode. That makes sense. To be honest with you, I wasn't even going to bring up the Kelso, except for the fact that I thought you had something to say on it, so we can breeze through that one unless you got something on it, Mike.
Nope.
Which was the race you thought it was? We're talking about the Flower Bowl, which unlike any other show, we probably lead with the amazing result of the Flower Bowl. I feel bad to have buried it 40 minutes in. We get to see Lady Eli make her triumphant return to the races, to no surprise, but still just great sport, fantastic stuff to see. Where do you think she ranks in this division, Jonathan?
Well, I think it's what's the division, right? It's like, does Tepin count in it because she is a female that runs two turns on the grass?
Yep.
Um,
I was
The
thinking
division
Philly
is
and Mare Turf
yeah.
for her.
Well,
That's where I was
yeah,
going.
no, of course,
oh,
yeah.
okay. Sorry, I
You
thought
see
you
where I
meant
went with that, right,
Eclipse. Because
No, I'm talking Breeders' Cup.
Okay.
I mean, she has to fit, right? I thought C. Khaleesi was going to have her number today, or Saturday, just based on the situations, and I think maybe that was just me trying to be too smart. Sometimes we do that where, oh, she's going to be bet down because of the story and da 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 da, and so look, she obviously likes that. Well, it's a different turf course, but she likes the firm going. You can look back at her Breeders' Cup performance to see that to be the truth. Feels like she'll be sitting on her biggest race, third off of a long layoff, to say the least. So yeah, I mean, she makes sense to me out there. It just depends on who else goes there, right? I mean, if Miss Temple City decides to do the little stretch, I mean, not that I even think that would happen, but that could make it a little bit easier, a little bit more difficult. And then also see Khaleesi with maybe a little bit of a better pace scenario will be able to unleash her run in a more favorable way, and maybe that could turn the tables. But it's an interesting race nonetheless, and how amazing it is that she got back and won a Grade 1.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to talk about the race, Mike. Take your pick whether you want to talk about it from a sporting point of view or if you want to offer your assessment of who you like in a C. Khaleesi Lady Eli rematch.
I like the other Chad, I'll be honest. Give me Desita all the way.
I think she is hurt. I think I just
really?
saw that headline on DRF.com today. Let me confirm that before I say it officially.
Shame.
Rather than have you
shame.
go on that topic, I think that was a headline I saw just this very morning on DRF.com. But, Desita sideline for rest of the year. It's right here on the homepage now under top headlines. I'm sure everybody listening to the show already knows that you should go to drf.com to get all the up-to-the-minute information. I'm not going to give away the store on that. You can go and read Dave Grenning's piece on it if you're interested. But, yeah, so that's so try that answer again.
Well, geez, now I have to rethink it. I mean, all things being equal, I think Lady Eli is the better horse. I think, in the second start off the layoff, she was more ready than in the first. I would expect her to move forward off of this. I just think, just knowing what I knew about her before, seeing what I saw on Saturday in person down at the paddock, as well as when they crossed the finish line, she's just, I think, a better horse than C. Khaleesi. That said, I mean, there's some good ones coming over. Found supposedly is going to come back over, and it's no
for the turf though. I would think not the Philly and Mare.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But there are an impressive array of Euros. One who's on my watch list since ARC undercard day, Somi Dar, is the one that I'm thinking about. Got kind of a difficult trip, I thought, in the race on the ARC undercard. Ended up seemed like in a perfect place. Got kind of shuffled back. Finished well, but didn't have a chance to get to the top two. Looks to me like one who might be suited for USA Racing. I don't know. I think C. Khaleesi with more of a pace situation. I felt like of the two, Lady Eli was the one who was more laid out. I don't believe that she improved necessarily from the race in Saratoga. I think that was a victim of maybe not getting the greatest ride under the rabbit. And I think she kind of ran the same race again, and that was her day. And gosh, I'd love to see her in the Philly and Mare, win the Philly and Mare Turf, and it'd be a great story. But I think more of my money might be going in other directions with a little bit of a save on her, because I don't really feel like losing to Lady Eli. But I don't know. I'm not personally. I thought it was the greatest, and I love the result on Saturday, and I'd love to be proven wrong. But I feel like the money might be more in betting against her in a few weeks at the Breeders' Cup. Does that sound sound to you guys?
Well, I hope people are thinking like you, because I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I feel like she had to do her own dirty work against a good horse who wasn't necessarily tiring late in Sentiero Italia. And I don't know, maybe you're right. And I would imagine in the betting, C. Khaleesi is going to be a much favorable or a much more attractive price than Lady Eli will be. But I don't know. Personally, I just think Lady Eli is better.
Jonathan, you teased Big Gray Rocket before. Let's go to the Champagne, I think, unless either of you guys has anything pressing to say about the turf sprint. And you can tell us what you thought of that result and the winner in there, Practical Joke.
This is not as extreme, but it's the Liam's map theory to me. Like, I want Syndergaard back 18 times more than I want Practical Joke. Practical Joke got a setup, set right in behind, super fast fractions. Syndergaard buried the other speed, which was the speed that I had bet on. And I want Syndergaard moving forward. You know, the stretch, obviously the 2-turn stretch is a question. It always will be. But, wow, I thought that was an unbelievable performance and was extremely unlucky to get beat.
Yeah, it really was great. It was fun to see the human Syndergaard on hand to watch his equine namesake, and very funny. I wish I could give credit to who originated it, but it'll be on my Twitter feed. If you see, I retweeted the photo of Syndergaard, the human, on the Equicizer, which was pretty entertaining. I would agree. I thought that was sort of an eye-popping race from Syndergaard, though it did make me wonder about, 2 turns can be very favorable for a horse with that kind of speed, allowed to dictate terms and maybe not have to go as fast early as in the more testing 1-turn configuration. It's the way that I look at it. What do you think, Mike? Is he headed forward to the Breeders' Cup? What do we know about what's next for Syndergaard?
Yeah, and I'll answer the question. Before I answer that, I'll answer the question that you asked first, which was Practical Joke or Syndergaard. You know, we've talked on the podcast of horses who benefit from potentially breaking poorly. And I think if you want an example of that, a textbook example of that, rewatch the Champagne and focus on Practical Joke's break from the gate. Broke slow, ducked in a little bit. I think that absolutely helped him in being able to settle and run down the speed that, like Jonathan said, put away the other speed, and then was, I don't even want to say vulnerable late, because he seemed to re-rally. Syndergaard was incredibly game. The only reason why he lost that race is he got the worst of the bobs. It was an amazing race to watch live. And of the two, I absolutely want Syndergaard going forward. I believe he's going to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I haven't heard anything otherwise, and I would expect that that's the case. But wow, what an amazing race. And I'll mention Chad Brown trained Practical Joke. He had horses entered in 4 graded stakes over the weekend between Keeneland, or on Saturday, actually, just Saturday, at Keeneland and Belmont. He won all 4 of them. He had 8 runners entered. He hit the board with all 8 that he had entered.
We've said it many times before on this show, and I'm sure we're going to say it many times again. It's Chad Brown's world. We're just living in it. Incredible stuff. From Chad over the weekend. After,
we can jump forward to the Hill Prince, but even if we don't even just say anything after he ran 1, 2, 3 in the Hill Prince. I was there with my 3-year-old son, and I just said, right after they crossed the line, I said, it's Chad Brown's world. And he walked through the clubhouse at Belmont just saying, it's Chad Brown's world, Chad Brown's world. And all the old guys were just looking at him, shaking his head.
I love it. Yeah, Camelot Kitten, pretty impressive in the Hill Prince, but doubt we're seeing anything there that's going to trouble the best of the older turf horses, or do you think I'm giving them short shrift, JK?
Short. I don't know. I mean, I like Beach Patrol, but is he going to win is he going to win the turf in the Breeders' Cup? I mean, I don't see that happening. Camelot Kitten. It's frustrating because he's won 4 graded stakes this year. And he's a full brother to one of my favorite horses of all time, and I literally have not cashed on him once. Look, I tried to find Chad's email a couple years ago to tell him that he should run Bobby's Kitten down the hill just because of the way Bobby ran. Camelot Kitten doesn't have those same problems that Bobby had with being kind of a maniac, but what the heck? Let's run him down the hill and see if he likes it like his brother did.
You end up on any FBI watch lists for stalking for that behavior, Jonathan? Or were you able to get away with it?
No, I got away from it. Let's just say if I run for president, I could come back.
Don't go there. Anything further on the Hill Prince, Mike? I think your story about Teddy running through the clubhouse kind of said it all.
Yeah, no, that's about it. I mean, I'm just stupid for not betting the Chad Brown try. I mean, come on. It's like easy money, right?
Why handicap when you can just bet Chad Brown? Unfortunately, if you look at the ROIs on as great as he is, it goes to show you what a difficult game horse racing is. The ROIs show that you're obviously just clowning around with that. When I'm clowning around when I make that statement, but it does sure seem that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the feature at Belmont. Somebody made a good point on Twitter that I just wanted to, I guess I'm stealing it. I need to start writing down who says these things, because otherwise I'm kind of just stealing. It doesn't really help to give credit to say, oh, I saw it on Twitter. But somebody pointed out that I made the comment about the Breeders' Cup diminishing the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Somebody else made, I think, the better point that it's one of these things where some places you gain, some places you lose ground. The emergence of the Pennsylvania Derby, moving it later, and the prestige that race has gotten was probably more of a factor in diminishing the Jockey Club Gold Cup, because now all the top 3-year-olds are going there. Like, picture this Jockey Club Gold Cup field merged with the field for the Pennsylvania Derby, like it would have been back in the old days when the Pennsylvania Derby was run Labor Day weekend or whatever. And you can see how this race has sort of lost some of its stature over the years. But that being said, I don't know. I thought it was kind of fun to see, not just because I bet him and picked him, but I thought it was kind of fun to see Opportunity do this. I was picturing Matt Bernier doing jumping jacks. Were you with Bernier for this race, JK? Wasn't he out at Keeneland?
He was.
Was he on air at this point?
Yeah, I think he was on air. I don't think we were watching this race together, but I saw him afterwards, and he was excited.
Was he beaming?
But but it wasn't. I don't think it was one of those deals where he'd been chasing it for so long, and the value was so little. I don't think he'd changed the world by any means.
Value was so little.
He's 7-2.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great price for that horse in that race.
No, I think if you've been chasing Opportunity like I have for a long time,
you need 30 to 1, and you need it a bunch of times.
Yeah, you don't wake up in sweats in the middle of the night thinking I can't wait to get 7-2 on that horse.
I don't know. I was more than happy with it, to be honest with you. But I take your point.
The Opportunity dream to me has always been is that he's going to get a meltdown at 1.25 miles when he's 26-1. Like that's the dream that I've always had for him. Not him winning the worst Gold Cup that I've seen at 7-2.
Well, I also think that point about the meltdown and the way the horse was ridden is worth mentioning. I'm happy to see that Team Baffert followed my riding instructions, and that this isn't some stone cold closer. This is a horse who could be a couple of lengths out of it at the first couple of calls and just do what he does best, and that's grind his way through the stretch. Fortunately, on Saturday, it was good enough. I don't think there's any key takeaways for me here in terms of Breeders' Cup action, though I do think that Opportunity at a price underneath going 1.25 miles idea is potentially interesting for some race down the line. What did you think, Mike? Any takeaways from this year's Jockey Club Gold Cup?
Yeah, not really. I mean, he I think got the better of a couple rivals that I don't think we're going to necessarily see as players in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Again.
And so I don't know what to make of it. But Jonathon made a point about getting a pace meltdown at 26-1 at some future date. I mean, isn't that possibly the scenario if you can conceive some sort of crazy duel between, say, Arrogate and California Chrome? Isn't that possibly the scenario in the Classic? He's going to be a huge price, right?
That one's for you, JK. Or did we lose Jonathon?
I don't know.
He's not
No.
here.
I was right. No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
He's just thinking.
I
we got about a minute left, just so you know.
Yeah, no, I think so. But unfortunately, it's like I think that he kind of woke people up to the idea that he could be that second, third, or fourth horse. Where I preferred him much better when his form was a little dirtier. It's a little bit cleaner now as a Grade 1 winner.
That's fair. Yeah, but you don't think neither of you actually think he could win the race, do you?
I mean, who are the big three in the race, right? California Chrome, Arrogate. Who am I missing? I guess
it's only a big two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so big 2.5. If one of the 2.5 don't win, I want him more than I want like a horse like Melatonin or a horse like if
Fair.
Dort happens to run in that race or F and X, I want him more than I want those horses.
No, that's fair. And he certainly looks like a terrific third key in that situation.
And you asked if he could win, and the answer is of course he could win. We've seen it happen before in the Classic. I'm not saying he's the most likely winner, and I'm not saying he's even more than, say, a 5 to 10% chance winner, but we've seen crazier long shots win the Classic before. My
gut is I'd lay the 26-1 happily.
Well, okay,
I love the horse.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I wouldn't say, off of that Jockey Club Gold Cup, I'm excited or looking to bet him. But at the right price, he's a closer that might be interesting in a race that might be a little devoid of a closer like that.
20-1 currently on Opportunity, to 5-2 for California Chrome. Geez, that's unbelievable value. And 3-1 for Arrogant. I'm going to wrap up the show because I got to make a phone call to the UK, guys. I want to thank Chris Pipito. I want to thank Jonathon Kinchen. I want to thank Mike Hogan. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for listening, especially those of you who tuned in live. If you're interested in listening to the shows live, check out, you can go to Spreaker, I think, and find us on there, DRF Players Podcast. Or easiest thing, there are links that are sent around in our Twitter when we're doing the live shows. The next one should be on Friday at 9:15. We will be back then. And until then, I hope you win all your photos. Your photos. Your photos. Your photos. Your photos. Your photos. Your photos.